So I'd like to talk to you today about a famous Jewish man and the somewhat infamous Jewish sect that he led. Most of the facts that I'm going to be sharing with you today are facts that you already know, but I'd like to speak from a slightly different angle, maybe shift our paradigm ever so slightly about those facts. We all know that a large chunk of the Old Testament, or the Tanakh, was written to or about Israel, and heavily sprinkled within those writings we find prophecies about a coming Messiah, a divinely sent or appointed king who is going to deliver Israel. And we also know, because a couple times ago we talked about the house of Judah and the house of Israel, we also know that there came a time when Israel was in the house of Israel, those northern tribes went into exile. The Jewish people were all that was left. And so for the remainder of this video, I'll be talking about a lot about the Jewish people because that's who we were dealing with at this point. So out of the Jewish people arose, starting several hundred years before Christ, there started arising Jewish sects. We know of some of them: the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Nazarenes, the Zealots. Peter was a zealot, and there were a whole lot of other sects. And once in a while, out of one of these sects, a person would arise that people deemed probable as a possible Messiah. So this happened on occasion throughout the years. So it was with that, into that backdrop, that a young Jewish girl named Miriam is made pregnant with a baby she names him Yeshua. And the Spirit of Yahweh overshadows her. Her name is Miriam. The Spirit of Yahweh overshadows her. She names the baby a combination of two words, one meaning Yahweh, one meaning saves or delivers. And so the name sounded something like Yahashua or Yahshua or Yeshua. And we lose some of that meaning when we go with the Greek word Jesus. It just doesn't have the same meaning. So I'll be using Yeshua today. So that little baby was born, circumcised on the 8th day, lived as a little Galilean Jewish boy. His family observed the loving instructions of Yahweh and went to the feast days in Jerusalem, lived a Jewish life. When he was around 30 years old, according to the custom in that part of the world, he went off on his own. He became a rabbi, and in that day there wasn't any formal ordination. There were lots of rabbis around. It just meant that you were a teacher. So he began to be one of those teachers. He had disciples, as all the other rabbis did. And those disciples, the rabbi would go out and ask certain people if they wanted to follow him, or perhaps the potential student would come and ask if they could follow that particular rabbi. So Yeshua did all of that. His disciples, of course, were all Jewish. We're inside. Everything that we're going to be talking about today is inside of that Jewish community. And so his disciples were following him. At that point, the learning style was by imitation. So these young men would seek to watch everything that the Messiah was doing, listen to everything that the rabbi was doing, listen to everything he was saying, and try very hard to imitate in every way that they could. So like the other rabbis of the day, he had these disciples who were imitating him, and each rabbi would have certain things that were in their belief system or the way they behaved, and they would pass those on to their disciples. And in that way, you could tell that a disciple was a follower of a certain rabbi. And so Yeshua used that kind of language too. He said, people are going to know that you're my disciple as opposed to the disciple of one of these other rabbis when they see the way you love, or they see the way that you serve. So in this context, Yeshua and his disciples are walking around, and it was common in that day for rabbis or people to have discussions about inter-Jewish controversies. They would have these discussions. They all had doctrinal differences. They had differences about how they believed you were supposed to walk life out. And so Yeshua would get into conversations, and we see that. Sometimes he'd be talking with some scribes or some Pharisees or some Sadducees. And he would often, with his words or even with his actions, come against some of the beliefs that these sects held. The additions, especially the traditions and the additions that they had placed, they had made additions to the laws of Yahweh. So he would come against those things in a significant way and often. But you will not find him coming against the ways of Yahweh. You won't find him coming against Yahweh's actual instructions. So sometimes we can misinterpret, if we don't understand all the nuances of what's going on, we can misinterpret these conflicts that he has with people of various sects. He was not coming against the laws of Yahweh or the rules per se of Yahweh. What he was coming against was the issues that each of these sects happened to carry and the burdens and the injustices that were birthed out of some of their traditions. It's important for us, I think, to understand these fine nuances about Yeshua. He was not, as sometimes it can seem to us who have been in the church for a while, he is actually not what we've thought him to be. He's not a slightly Western, slightly somehow anti-Jewish revolutionary who was there to prove that the law was foolish or burdensome. He was actually a Jewish man from the family or the tribe of Judah. Even in his adult years, he went to the when he wasn't under his parents' authority, he went to Jerusalem for the feast days. He participated in synagogue. He never gave an indication that he wanted to start a new religion. We really don't see that. If we read the words of Yeshua and the events that surrounded his life, if we read them with honesty, we seriously don't see a man who is attempting to pull people away from their old ways of serving Yahweh into some kind of new religion. He was not at all anti-Jewish. He said on a regular basis to his disciples and to others, he said, "I've come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel." He made that very clear that he was the Messiah that was coming to Israel. I think these are important things for us to really understand in order to understand any other messages that we find in the Word of God.